Imagine a silent battlefield. No clashing swords, no marching boots, no smoke rising from cannons. The enemy stands there, numerous, armed, confident, but something shifts. Slowly their generals begin to hesitate, their lines unravel, and before the first strike is even made, the war is already over. Victory has been achieved without a single drop of blood being spilled. It might sound impossible, but for some masters of strategy, this is the ultimate goal: to win without fighting. In this story, you'll discover how an invisible mind, working in the shadows of time, turned an imminent conflict into a flawless victory. A silent victory, but a devastating one. Centuries ago in ancient China, a land defined by rival kingdoms, endless wars, and intricate games of power, there lived a general whose presence bordered on mythical. He didn't seek fame through slaughter, nor glory on blood-soaked battlefields. His true weapon was his deep understanding of human nature and the art of war. While other generals sharpened their swords, he sharpened his plans. His name echoed with respect and fear among both allies and enemies. What set him apart was simple. He believed that the most complete victory is the one in which the enemy destroys itself. This mindset came directly from principles that would later be immortalized in one of the most influential works ever written, The Art of War. Sun Tzu, strategist and military philosopher, argued that supreme excellence consists not in winning every battle, but in breaking the enemy's resistance without fighting. That line, poetic on the surface, holds immense power. It suggests that the real war happens long before spears clash. It unfolds in the mind, in preparation, in the careful reading of the opponent. And that is exactly what one general, centuries later, applied with perfection, rewriting the destiny of an entire kingdom. The story begins in a time of great tension. Two neighboring kingdoms were fighting over fertile lands and valuable trade routes. On one side stood a young army, confident in its numbers and eager to prove its worth. On the other stood a veteran commander who observed every enemy move like a chess player who already knows his opponent's next 10 steps. Instead of immediately mobilizing his troops, he began something far more subtle: an invisible war. Spies were dispatched not to sabotage, but to observe. Messengers were carefully instructed to spread ambiguous information. Small gestures began to undermine the confidence of the rival kingdom. Rumors of fake alliances, whispers of betrayal, and exaggerated reports of military strength began circulating among enemy officers. It didn't take long for doubt to set in. Meanwhile, within his own territory, the veteran general wasn't just reinforcing walls and arsenals. He was fortifying morale. He knew that a united, confident population was a stronger shield than any fortress. Cities were stocked with supplies, supply lines secured, and most importantly, local leaders were gathered to hear his plans directly. This internal clarity stood in stark contrast to the growing disarray that was eating away at the enemy from within. The decisive moment came when his spies returned with critical information. The enemy army was divided. Their generals disagreed on when to attack. Some feared that the opposing side was stronger than it seemed. Others believed hesitation would signal weakness. Discord spread like wildfire through dry grass. That was when the veteran commander made his boldest move. He withdrew all visible troops from the border, leaving behind only a small garrison. It was the perfect psychological trap. To the enemy, it looked either like a strategic retreat or a sign of weakness. Either way, it demanded a quick decision. But how do you decide when every general has a different interpretation? Hesitation turned into silent panic. Days later, a seemingly ordinary caravan crossed the border, carrying messages of peace. But it also carried carefully crafted false information. Already suspicious of one another, the enemy generals interpreted these signs in conflicting ways. Some saw an opportunity for advantageous negotiations. Others suspected a trap. As they argued, their forces froze. Paralysis set in. The veteran commander watched from afar, like a playwright enjoying a drama of his own making. Then came the climax of the invisible strategy. In the dead of night, small campfires were lit on strategic hills, simulating massive military camps. Distant drums echoed through the darkness, creating the illusion of a colossal army on the move. But in reality, only a handful of men were positioned cleverly, making noises from multiple locations to mimic a vast force. The fear that already existed inside the enemy camp did the rest. Generals began blaming each other for failing to anticipate the attack. Contradictory orders spread. Entire units moved to useless positions, leaving gaps in their defenses. The largest army in the region began to collapse on its own. By dawn, there was no battle, only chaos. Without a single arrow fired, the enemy lines scattered. Some generals retreated on their own, fearing ambushes. Others deserted, convinced they'd been betrayed. The veteran commander advanced slowly, occupying abandoned territories almost without resistance. What could have been a bloody war became an almost silent conquest. Chroniclers of the time wrote that no border had ever changed hands so cleanly. The enemy was defeated by itself. This story is more than just a military anecdote. It is a living application of a strategic principle that remains as relevant today as it was thousands of years ago. True victory happens before the confrontation. Sun Tzu famously said, "All warfare is based on deception, but deception doesn't necessarily mean treachery. It means creating conditions in which your opponent makes decisions that favor you, without realizing it. It means turning information into a weapon and time into an ally." The commander in this story understood that every army carries within itself seeds of doubt, ambition, and fear. And if you know when to water them, the tree of disorder will grow on its own. Think about modern warfare. Entire campaigns are often decided long before tanks roll in. Economic blockades, diplomatic alliances, information wars, all of this follows the same invisible strategic logic. Today, battles also unfold in markets, media, and networks. Entire companies are defeated not by direct confrontation, but through intelligent strategies that exploit internal weaknesses. The same applies to political disputes, negotiations, and everyday life. If you understand your opponent's mental terrain, you already hold the advantage. At its core, winning without fighting is the art of preparing the battlefield so thoroughly that when the time for confrontation comes, it's no longer necessary. This requires patience, insight, emotional control, and long-term vision. The commander in our story didn't fall for provocations or rush into action. He waited, shaped perceptions, and allowed the enemy to become tangled in its own doubts. That's the difference between someone who plays chess and someone who merely moves pieces. Now imagine applying this mindset to your own life. How many times have you stepped into unnecessary battles simply because you didn't realize you could have won before they even began? How many opportunities have slipped away because strategy was replaced by impatience? Sun Tzu reminds us that the greatest victory is the one that happens without a fight. Not because you ran away from conflict, but because you transcended it. You created a scenario in which fighting became irrelevant. Throughout history, great leaders have understood this principle. Emperors, generals, visionaries, and masters of diplomacy. They all knew that brute force can conquer territory, but only strategy conquers minds and hearts. And once you've won those, resistance crumbles. If this story gave you a new way of looking at conflict, strategy, or even life itself, share your thoughts in the comments. I want to know, have you ever won without fighting? How would you apply this invisible strategy to the challenges you face today? If you enjoy deep content that blends history, strategy, and timeless lessons, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel. It strengthens our community and ensures you don't miss the next chapters of this strategic journey. Because this was only the first of many stories where wars were won, long before the battle began.